Well, good evening. This is Andre Faust for What's the Point? And what is the point this evening? Well, the point is the Bank of Canada today released Stephen S. Pollock, the governor of the Bank of Canada, the Central Bank of Canada, has released that effective immediately the prime rate is going to be going up 1.5%. Well, what does that mean, eh? and that, so this is going to happen overnight. So, what does that really mean, right? I mean, what that means is that if there's a mortgage that's coming up for renewal tomorrow, the new renewal rate will be 1.5 above what they're paying today. And let's look at that for a moment. I mean, if you're a senior and on fixed income, that increase of 1.5% could make the difference whether you make your mortgage payments or not. And if you can't, obviously the house gets, gets foreclosed, and you lose that, that investment and all the money that you've put into the mortgage. On the consumer end of things, when you're going to go for a loan for a car, for a big ticket item, that increase of 1.5% is going to be reflected in that. Now, the whole rationale, what the Bank of Canada is saying, they're saying it's because the economy is doing well. Investors are starting to invest. Okay, let's put the brakes on right here and now. During the last two elections, provincial and federal, both governments, Brian Gallant government and the Trudeau government, has said they were going to sink billions of dollars into creating an infrastructure to generate employment. And that is consistent with Keynesian economics. Once you put in money, into people's pocket, they will spend. So now we're starting to see and reap the benefits of this monies that's been injected into the economy in the building of all of our infrastructures and other programs that both governments have started. The interest rate will counteract all of that because it's going to take money out of people's pocket. Now, the Bank of Canada is also saying the reason why they want to, to put this interest in is to prevent inflation from happening. Well, if you keep inflation down, inflation means, the price of a commodity, the price goes up, and it means you have to make work more hours to buy that same product. But really setting the interest rate at a lower rate or at a higher rate does the same thing. It takes money out of people's pocket. So that, in effect, decreases the buying power of the person's money, right? So, like, this does not make any absolute sense in this. But let's look at who the winners are. It's the retail commercial banks that are the winners in this. They are the big winners because, now I'm going to back up the pages here. We're going to take a shot back, and I do have talking notes, so I'm not making this up as I'm going, and it's so important that I get it right. I've created backup notes. So we're going to go back to 1937 or 38 and between 1974. You see, back in 1938, the governments were borrowing from the Bank of Canada at zero interest rate. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, zero interest rates. None of this compound interest bullshit that the government, when I refer to governments right now, I'm going to use it in the context of mean federal, provincial, and municipal governments, because they all borrow from the retail banks, and they're paying through the teeth on the interest. That's such at a point that they're not really paying off any principals. They're paying these retail banks interest on interest. So anyway, going back to that period between 1937 and 1973, Canada was doing very, very well. It was you were able to, they built the highways as the McDonald Cartier Freeway, public transportation systems, subway lines, airports, the St. Lawrence Seaway that Quebec is using over Canada's head for as a bargaining tool, and the funding of the universal health cares and our little piddly pensions that we get. That was all up to 1974. And then, traumatic roll, things changed. The government of the day decided they were no longer going to borrow from the central bank, the Bank of Canada, the People's Bank. They were going to stop dead from doing that. And then they went and started to borrow from the private banks or the consumer banks or the retail banks, whatever label that you wish to put onto them. That's what the government started to do. Now I'm going to take a quote from Mackenzie King, and it's very similar to another quote, and I forget who said this, but this was an American. He who controls the gold controls the government. Well, this is the Canadian version of that. And anyway, I've got to find it here. It's somewhere in my notes. And that, okay. Now, obviously, Trudeau didn't follow the wisdom of Mackenzie King, who once said, I'm going to read this out word for word, once a nation parts with the control of its currency and credit, it matters not who makes the nation's laws. Usury, once in control, will wreck any nation until the control of the issue of the currency and credit is restored to the government and recognized as the most sacred responsibility. All talk of sovereignty, of parliament, and of democracy is idle and futile. The great words of Mackenzie King. Our government is not following that at all. Instead, they're sitting there making the rich richer. They're coming up with all kinds of reasons to try to put the screws to us, but it's us at the bottom of the ladder that is paying, and I'd like to say the F word with an ing at the end of it, but I'm going to try to stay civil. Robert Boucher, I don't have my glasses on, so I've got to look a little closer to the screen to see. Okay, Robert Boucher, with tariffs going up, many things, the economy becoming more unstable, this is a bad time for raising interest rates unless cash is right around the corner. You got it right there. It is. We're just starting to get our shit together, and now this interest rates comes in, which is, like I said earlier, it's going to offset any gains that were made with injecting money into the economy. This is going to negate all of that. And like I say, this thing doesn't make sense. I mean, it didn't make sense in 1974 when Trudeau and the Liberal government, and personally, I mean, I've read a lot of reasons and theories to why he did that, and it all amounts to what it looks like is the money people, they get together, whether it's at a G7, G20 or whatnot, they shoot out deals and all this crap, right? And they come up with these brilliant ideas to keep the rich getting richer. One of the things just come to mind that, what's his name? Stephen Poulez once said, he said, well, right now, we're kind of sitting on our hands because we're not quite sure how this NAFTA deal is going to go. That's the North American trade agreement, right? They don't know how that's going to play out with old Trump dude, right? And, yeah, we don't know. So, working with the unknown, what in the hell are you doing? Raising interest rates. Our society is changing. The society of today is not the same society as it was 20 years ago. The theories of economics are obsolete. They're not ready for this world. Absolutely not ready at all. And, we're using old ideas for new problems, and we've got to get out of that mindset. We've got to work for Canadians to get Canadians back into the labor force, and not minimum wage kind of crap of stuff. Money that actually brings, a living. I mean, this income tax, or excuse me, this tax increase, who is it going to hurt? Well, geez, Brian Gallant did a good deed. Increased minimum wage. Well, this friggin', interest rate, that completely negates that interest, the minimum wage. Once this is in, the buying power of that minimum wage is going to be diminished again, right? So we've got problems here. Things aren't balancing out. Again, we're losing buying power, no matter how you cut it. Whether you try to control for inflation, you lose buying power. You raise the interest rates, you lose buying power. The difference is that when you use interest to cut inflation, really you're working for the wealth. It's the banks that end up getting the benefits because they're getting all this, all these loans, but the big money loans are from the government, right? And our stupid governments are paying somebody else when they could be paying themselves, like pre-1937 or 38, getting loans interest free, and prosperity exists. So I don't know what the solutions are. Well, I do know what the solutions are, but if I articulated those solutions, I would be thrown in jail. There's undoubtedly, there would be. I'd be down the Black River Road, and then probably up to Renews and put in solitary, because I'd be seen as a very, very dangerous person because I'm going to challenge the fucking elites. Yeah. Well, I always got to keep myself calm down and take a few deep breaths here. And we've got to approach this strategically. We've got to remove our emotions from our thought making. We've got to look at this rationally. Now, there is an upcoming elections, provincially, but this is not really a provincial issue. But the province could have some persuasion power with the federal government to return back to an old system going back to 1937, where we don't pay interest on interest as far as a country, federal, provincial, or municipality. We've got to get that back under control. How are you doing, Stephen? Good to see you on. I've got some excellent people coming on too. I'd like to hear from Stephen Horseman in MLA, if he's caught any of the discussion here, and I'll just, for his purpose, I will quickly recapitulate what it is. The Bank of Canada today announced an increase of 1.5% increase in interest. The Liberal government has done wonderful work in injecting money into the economy to stimulate the economy, and at both levels, provincials and at the federal level. Well, now we've kick-started the economy. Now we have the Bank of Canada being the antithesis of that, with the increase of the interest rate, which will negate all the efforts that has been put in to stimulate this economy. And just repeating myself, is that inflation means loss of buying power. Increasing interest rate means loss of buying power. But there are serious consequences with the increase of interest over let the inflation move forward. And one is that it comes into the housing. People on fixed income, people on low income who have just got their new home, when their mortgage comes up to renewal, they're going to have to pay more. Now, the story doesn't end here. In September, somewhere around September 25th, the Bank of Canada is going to announce another interest rate increase. And if this keeps going, we're going to have what happened in the mid 80s, right? And I'm going to use the mortgage. New people got into their mortgage at 6%. That was, doable, manageable. And then at around 1984 to 85, somewheres like that, all of a sudden, the interest rates went up to 26%. That is absolutely right, my friends. 26%. Well, the banks had a field day with that. I mean, they were foreclosing left and right. Because from the bank's point of view, it doesn't matter who's in that house. It's who pays the mortgage. It's the mortgage payment that's that's important. They could keep going on forever, right? And the faces in the house and keeps changing. They go to foreclosure. The next person comes in. They pay their mortgage at a higher price. They can't make it. They go into foreclosure. And that house, really, from the bank's point of view, never loses any money. They just keep raking it. But obviously, who's paying for it? It's us. It's us people at the bottom of the ladder. We're the ones that are getting screwed. Especially the low income earners. The people on social assistance, of course, the likelihood of, it's possible that some can't afford mortgages, but I believe that's highly unlikely. So I'm going to kind of stick with the low income earners and even the middle class. Something that both federal and provincial has boasted about. Let's get the middle class moving. Well, guess what? The national average debt right now is $1.70. So for every dollar that is made, they pay out $1.70. So this increase of interest, how is that going to affect the middle class that the Liberal government was trying to save? So what is this thing here of all shooting themselves in the foot? Now, I speak about Liberal governments and Bank of Canada. Now, remember, they're really two separate entities. In theory, one is not supposed to interfere with the other. Right now, the role of the Bank of Canada is really to print money and set rates and anything relative to the economy. But what they don't do is they're no longer acting as the bank of the prime lenders. And that, thank you, Sherry. So this is something we have to take control. We got to take ownership of it, take it in our hands, because we don't have the political will to make that change. That has to come from the grassroots, from us. And I know Chris is going to probably slap me in the side of the head, just throwing a little thing at Chris. But this is more than common sense. This is thinking in terms of economics, thinking in mathematical structures, and making a forecast. And what will end up happening is that, I'm not saying that it's going to happen tomorrow, but if this trend of continuously increasing the interest rate, we're going to have hard times in Canada again. And all the advancements that we've done, and I applaud, and really I applaud the Liberal government for getting things moving. But now, will the Liberal government let the Bank of Canada undermine all its great efforts? So I guess I've said my piece. I'm just trying to see if there's anything that I'm omitting. So I'm looking at my talking points. Okay, we touched Mackenzie King. We've touched on the buying power of the people. So I guess I have a few minutes. And this goes with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Now I get some people, posting on how, and these are Canadians, right? Posting on how great Donald Trump is. How can you, if I walked over near your house and started to take money out of your food, out of your belly, how great of a guy would I be? Well, this is exactly what Donald Trump is doing to us Canadians with these goddamn tariffs. He's making it extremely difficult. So he's hurting us Canadians. So how can any Canadian justify to say that Donald Trump, oh, he's a great guy and I like what he's doing. But isn't that analogous to what's happened with the Bank of Canada? The federal government went and gave the private banking system the power to lend money to the to all three levels of government at compound interest, and say that's a good thing. I don't know. It's maybe I should open up a bottle of Captain's Morgan's and just sucker back. But anyway, I am gonna conclude. I thank you for coming on board, and we're looking for the next time. I don't know what the next topic is. There is one that I'm working on influence, the media, and propaganda. That's up and coming, but there's a fair amount of work. For those who know me, I do my homework first before I start spewing. That's very important for me to be as accurately as humanly possible. And sometimes I don't get it right, and I do appreciate when people call me on that. So from Mr. Boucher, why the IMF and World Banks rush in after any conflicts. The banks want us forever in debt, even countries. How can we get away from that? Will be interesting. Even if possible, according to Consumer Reports, almost 1 million mortgage holders will be at risk with a 1% increase in rates. And yes, Robert, that's what I'm getting at. There's this move to keep increasing the interest rates, and and even businesses that are depending on loans are putting their necks on the guillotine. Right now is not the time to increase the bank interest. Let's wait 5-10 years until we really get moving. We can live with with inflation, and I think we can keep inflation from going amok. But like I say, now I'm going to put on my conspiracy theory hat on. As earlier mentioned, I actually think that all the major players of the game, the bankers, the political heads, they all get together and they they roll up a couple joints or whatnot, and maybe some of them even take a little shot of Coke or something like that, and they all planned the economic strategies. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's us, the consumer, it's us, the grassroots people, that bear all. We're the ones who loses our cars, our houses, and I've said this before. Once you see a recession, and you can check this out yourself. Google, look at recessions, and then during the same time period, look at the returns of the banks. Banks boast record profits during periods of recession. Why is that? And now, why as people, why do we not respond? I mean, is it because we do not understand it? Is it that we do understand and we go into a state of denial? Or is it that we're afraid to lose the little bit that we have? I don't know why. These things are never an election issue. It's it's something that we just seem to leave. John, the analogy, it's like letting your parents control your allowance. But eventually we as citizens have to come together, bite the bullet, and start putting pressures on getting the bank, control back to the Bank of Canada to put out loans interest-free to the provinces, the federals, and the municipalities. That's the direction that we end up that we have to go. I don't see any way out. So I'm going to be concluding. Thank you very much for tuning on, and anyway, if anyone has any ideas that they wish me to do a story on, or if they wish to be interviewed, you can contact me at Andre, ANDRE, at jafaust.com, and I'll I'll spell that out as JAUST.com. So it's Andre at JAFAUSD.com, or Facebook. And if you think what I'm saying makes any sense, share the video. So till next time, God bless. Take care. Thanks, James Lynn. D. Lane. Brenda, I'm just going to say some howdy doodies here. How are you doing, Vanda? Marion? David? Glad to see you've come on. Shara? Stephen? And the list is gone. Oh, Ronnie Tucker. Hey, Ron. Great to see you on there. He's a fellow colleague. I got to put a plug for him. He's he's one of the best computer network IT technician around. So if you ever see his application come up looking for work, check this guy out. He's a winner. So till then, thank you very much, and God bless.